Hey guys, today we'll be looking at two different full tube headphone amps, both from Chinese manufacturers. These are two of the cheapest and most affordable full tube headphone amplifiers on the market. And what I mean by full tube is both the preamp stage and the power amp stage are both driven by tubes, as opposed to a hybrid tube amp where only the preamp stage is driven by tubes. So a few years ago I did a video showing my audio setup, and in that setup was a Shit Audio Valley 2, which is a hybrid tube amp. So those kind of tube amps only use the preamp stage for the tubes, and the power stage is still driven by solid state transistors. Whereas in these two devices, both the preamp and power stage is just fully tube all the way through, both the preamp and power stage. So usually full tube headphone amps cost a lot of money, or just full tube any kind of amp, right? Power amps or guitar amps or headphone amps, they all cost a lot more money than hybrid amps. They're generally heavier and they're generally less efficient, as in they won't output as much wattage as a solid state amp. So that's the thing about tube amps, is I think they're kind of like a niche thing, right? It's usually just audiophiles that prefer like full tube amps, because I mean, just think about it, right? Tubes are, for most purposes, outdated technology except for audio applications. They've been in use from really the 1920s to the 1960s are probably the heyday when they were used the most in consumer applications. But since then, since the 1960s, they've really been superseded by transistors. And for most things, solid state is probably better. Solid state amps still measure better than tube amps do. So it's kind of like almost like the vinyl versus CD thing, whereas vinyl, actually, some people still think vinyl sounds better, but there's a lot of problems with vinyl, right? You basically have to take more care to maintain it. The grooves wear down as the time goes on. It's not as perfect as a CD or FLAC is, right? CD or FLACs are more, they're perfect because they're never going to degrade, and they sound pretty much just as good, if not better, than vinyl, right? Especially the really high resolution DSD type files, like high res audio files. They have their frequency ranges actually are higher than even vinyl. So yeah, it's kind of like that. For audiophiles, a lot of us still prefer some old school technologies, not because it's better, but there's just some special charm about them. So when it comes to tube stuff, yeah, tubes are not going to be as accurate as solid state. They're not going to measure as well as solid state. They're going to have more distortion. They're heavier in general. They're more pricey. So why go with tube amps? Well, some people just like the sound of tubes. It's just tubes add a specific kind of distortion. They call it second order harmonics, I think. So tubes, they add a little bit of warmth. They add a little bit of their own type of signature to the tone, which a lot of people like. A lot of people like the harmonics generated by tubes. So that's why tubes are kind of like a niche market. But at the same time, a lot of audio enthusiasts like tubes, and also the way they look, right? Tubes just look really cool. They look really retro, really old school. You can show them off and people will be like, whoa, what is that, right? Most people have never seen tubes before, and they're probably really interested to see what it's like. And I mean, just the equipment, it looks cool, right? Tube equipment looks cool. So I would say there's the advantages and disadvantages of tubes, right? The disadvantage, of course, I think solid state, cheaper, more affordable, lighter, measures better. Tubes, I think the major advantage is their appearance. They have that retro appearance, and they have a special kind of color. They color the tone in a special way. They color the sound in a special way that some people like. That is just a little bit of introduction on why some people might prefer full tube amps. And most full tube amps on the market, like I said, are very expensive. They're usually over $500 for headphone amps and over $1,000 for full tube power amps. But these days, we've been seeing a lot of Chinese companies trying to drive down the price. So Chinese companies actually make a lot of tube stuff. There's actually high-end Chinese companies making tube stuff, like MKII, for example. MKII is really trying to compete with Luxman, who is another really well-known, that's a Japanese tube amplifier maker. I think MKII is the Chinese equivalent. They're really trying to be like a high-end tube amplifier equipment maker, and they also make DAPs as well. But MKIIs are really expensive as well. Today we'll be looking at the low end, basically. We'll be looking at some much more affordable Chinese brands, but still going with the full tube stuff. So on the left here we have the Little Dot Mark II. So this is the more affordable one out of these two. This one costs $150 US, and that is the cheapest I've ever seen a full tube headphone amplifier. Like I said, Shit Audio is actually well known for having providing some pretty good value for the price, especially since it's made in the US. But even the Shit Audio Valley 2s cost $150, about the same price as this, but it's a hybrid tube amp. This one is a full tube amp for the same price. So just run down the specs here in the overview. So these use the 6J1 pentode as the preamp tubes, and I actually put my own tubes in here. These are the GE Jan 5654 tubes, which actually use the same pins as the 6J1s. And then it uses a double diode triode 6 and 6 as the power tubes, I guess. And this combination forms a single-ended push-pull OTL Class A amplifier. OTL means output transformerless, I think. So that's another like special kind of headphone amp. But yeah, it's an OTL Class A amp, single-ended push-pull design. And yeah, like I said, $150 for that price. It's unbeatable. I've not seen anything cheaper than that. Like that's absolutely the bottom, the floor of what I've seen a full tube headphone amp for. Of course, you can find hybrid tube amps cheaper than that, but for a full headphone tube amp, yeah, I've not seen anything cheaper than that. So yeah, I swapped in some GE 5654s in the preamp tube, and then 6 and 6s, yeah, for the power tubes at the back. So yeah, let's talk about this one first, actually. So yeah, I can see on the front here, there's the LED indicator. This is a full size. It's a 1/4 inch headphone jack, as opposed to the 3.5 millimeter. So you need if you have a 3.5 millimeter, you need an adapter for a 1/4 inch, and it's single-ended, it's unbalanced. Then you have a volume knob right here. And yeah, it says output transformerless. So it's still, even though that it's, yeah, it doesn't have an output transformer supposedly, but this is the transformer right here. And yeah, this is the input and output. They're both RCA. So yeah, you can also use this as a preamp, I believe, and AC power in, and here it is the on-off switch. So pretty simple to operate. Yeah, simple set of inputs, simple set of outputs here, and yeah, usually how I use this is I connect my AKSC100 DAP to it, my DAP, and my DAP I just use the line out, and I use a 3.5 to RCA, and I connect it to the back of this, and that's basically how I use this thing. And I'll show you guys what it comes with. It comes with this. This is like some sort of warranty. Of course, it's a Chinese company, so it's going to be in Chinese, but the actual user manual, they do have one in English. So the Little Dot Mark II vacuum tube headphone amp, they actually have an English manual for this. So yeah, this is using domestic pentode vacuum tube 6J1, dual triode tube 6 and 6, and yeah, it tells you a bit about the actual specs, and tells you about the device a little bit. Install, first thing, install the vacuum tube. So yeah, do that, connect your headphones. Yeah, and tells you actually a little bit about the switches and jumper location. Interesting. So it tells you a bit about the circuit here. That's cool. Jumper switch allows different drivers. Okay, so I think if you want to switch some tubes, you might have to rebias. And if you do that, then there's maybe some jumper settings that you can switch out. Interestingly, internal gain. You also have 2 internal dip gain switches, which controls the gain. So yeah, if you have like really high impedance headphones, medium headphones, you can actually switch the gain with these dip switches, which is nice because I'll be using my Bayer DT-1990 Pros, which are 250 ohm headphones, so reasonably high impedance. Not 300 ohms actually, but yeah, we can see it's pretty high impedance, I'd say. Yeah, I would like to try this with a set of Sennheiser HD800s at one time. I don't have the money to afford that, but it would be nice to try that. And of course the Bayer Dynamic T1s, the first and second gen, which have 600 ohm impedance. I would like to try those with a output transformerless tube amp. What I heard is that really high impedance headphones like 300 ohms, 600 ohms, they work the best with OTL headphone tube amps. So yeah, supposedly the headphone tube amps have really high current. So I guess what happens is, or really high voltage. So what happens is yeah, when you use a really high impedance headphone, that's when it works best. When you have a low sensitivity, high impedance headphone. If you have a headphone that's too sensitive or too low impedance, then like an IEM, for example, then you're going to get a lot of background noise and a lot of hiss. And generally, you can't even turn the volume knob up very much, like because it's so powerful. Like for the tube amps, they have. So really, the type of headphones that pair the best with these full tube output transformerless tube amps are, yeah, high impedance, low sensitivity headphones like Sennheisers and Behrs. Generally, I would say that's probably the best. Supposedly they open them up a lot more, and there's a big difference. So I'll be checking out with my Sennheiser, DT1990 Pros, which are my highest impedance headphones. Yeah, like I said, if I have a Behr T1 or a Sennheiser HD800, that would be better, but I don't. Those are quite expensive. All right, so yeah, that's it for the Little Dot Mark II. These are $150, like really, really good value headphone amp because it's so cheap. Like, I really have not seen anything cheaper than this. This is the cheapest full tube headphone amp that I can find on the market right now. Little Dot Mark II. So, and it looks pretty well built, right? Yeah, $150 US, the same price as the Shit Audio Valley 2s. And it's a full tube headphone amp, not just a hybrid. All right, and today actually I'll be comparing this with the xDuoo TA-26. So this is another full tube headphone amp, but it's quite a bit, as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger. And it's also quite a bit heavier too. So it's quite a bit bigger than the Little Dot. See, yeah, even the transformer, you can see it's actually quite a bit more massive in size. Yeah, it's a bigger, heavier device, and it's also more expensive. So this costs roughly double the Little Dot. The Little Dot costs about $150. This costs about $300 US. So yeah, this is not, you know, the Little Dot's obviously ridiculously affordable for a full tube headphone amp, or just a full tube amp in general, but the xDuoo TA-26, I won't say is like really, really affordable, but it's still affordable relatively speaking for like a full tube headphone amp, right? So usually full tube headphone amps, you're gonna look at $500 or above. But this thing, $300, yeah, it's not as cheap as the Little Dot, but that's because the Little Dot's ridiculously affordable in good value. Like the xDuoo still makes a lot of good value stuff. So xDuoo is another Chinese company making a lot of, I would say, affordable audio stuff, especially tube stuff. So yeah, just like Little Dot, they're not quite as cheap as Little Dot, but they still provide some pretty good value for the price. So they still have some nice affordable stuff on their website out there. Make like all kinds of amplifiers, power amps, DACs, and tube amps, and headphone amps like this. So yeah, I'd say that the xDuoo is still a pretty good value Chinese company, just they're a little bit more expensive than Little Dot, but still relatively affordable when you're talking about this kind of audio equipment. So, and xDuoo stuff is, I mean, just compare it, this, like, you can tell that there's a build quality difference here, and there's a reason why this one is twice as expensive. I mean, it's bigger, it's heavier, it's better built. It's using this sandblasted aluminum here instead of well, this is still well built, right? The Little Dot is still well built, but you can tell that the xDuoo is just better finished, right? There's definitely more finishing on the xDuoo, and this just looks like a really nice piece of high audio gear, almost like a Cayenne actually, and Cayennes are pretty expensive actually. So yeah, these use different tubes than the Little Dot, and I'll show you guys what the tubes are. So I have the tubes right here. This is actually what comes inside the box for the xDuoo. So you get a power cord right here, and then you get a 3.5 to 1/4 inch jack adapter, and you get this small little warranty card here in Chinese, right? It's a Chinese company as well. And you get a instruction manual that's in Chinese, but I've also in English. Just the, yeah, okay, it's in Chinese and in English. So yeah, so you can tell this is smaller than the one I got from the Little Dot, but I think you get everything here. You get the parameters of the product, operations, safety instructions, the parts and stuff. Yeah, so it's pretty basic actually compared to the Little Dot. There's no dip switches or anything, it looks like, on this one compared to the Little Dot. So these are the tubes it comes with. It comes with a 6N 8P tube for the preamp and a 6N 5P tube for the buffer, which I guess is the output stage. So you can tell these tubes are quite a bit different than the Little Dot one because they're quite a bit bigger. So yeah, I'm actually not sure about the brand of these tubes. I think there's some Chinese brand here. But yeah, So when it comes to tube amps, a lot of enthusiasts like to roll tubes, which means they like to experiment with different kinds of tubes. And then the tubes can really range from the Chinese, the cheaper Chinese and Russian-made ones, all the way to, you know, the really expensive ones. Yeah, like there's expensive Japanese, I think, and Telefunken. I think there's all sorts of different tubes so you can try. Electro Harmonics, JJ, like. Sovtek is the one that's actually used in a lot of guitar amps. Shugong, Tungsol, yeah, a lot of different brands of tube makers. So a lot of people like to experiment around. General Electric, actually, you know, that's the one I'm using for my preamps on my little Dot right now. But yeah, lots of different tube amp makers, and yeah, people like to experiment rolling the tubes, which means changing out the tubes for different brands and different types and stuff like that, as long as they're compatible. So yeah, this just comes, I'm just gonna test it out with the stock tubes, right? I'm not too deep into it yet where I have to look up different tubes to see how they sound. I may look into it in the future, you know, to check out what kind of tubes are out there. But for now, we're just gonna use the stock tubes and see what they sound like. So this is the 6N8P tube for the preamp. As you can see, it's quite a bit different. I'll show you the, yeah, so this is the size of the, this is the 6J1. That's the one used in the little Dot. It's quite a bit smaller than the one used in the xDuoo. So yeah, these are both preamp tubes, you can see, but there's a pretty big difference in size here. I'm not sure if that's gonna lead to a huge difference in the sound, but we shall see. So yeah, this one go here. Yeah, this is, alright, I'm going to install it like this. Okay, here we go. Man, these are really nice. I mean, just the massive tubes. I mean, just for the appearance alone, right? Yeah, I'm not sure about the sound differences, right, between the tubes. I'm not sure if the size really contributes a huge tonal difference, but at least from the aesthetics, wow. And then this is an even bigger one. This is the 6N5P tube. Look at the size of this thing. Wow, it looks like a, you know, some people may confuse this for a light bulb or something like that. No, it's a vacuum tube. Wow, this is a pretty nice looking vacuum tube right here. Very, very big. Again, this is some Chinese company, I guess, made this one, so it's not like a high-end tube or anything like that. So maybe in the future I might experiment around with different brands and try rolling them. But for now, we're going to check out the stock tubes, and yeah, put this one in as well. Oh, look at that. All right, and that, yeah, that's the tubes on the xDuoo TA-26. And you guys can see, wow, this is one heck of a, yeah, I can see the difference here. Little Dot Mark II versus the xDuoo TA-26 right here. The TA-26 is much bigger, much better finishing, bigger tubes, obviously, although it only has 2. The little Dot has 4. And yeah, otherwise it's bigger and heavier, twice the price too. So we'll see if there's if the xDuoo is much better, because at twice the price I would think that there is a difference in sound quality, but we'll see. Alright, now let's check out the I/O on this thing. So yeah, on the front here, first of all, it looks a lot nicer than the one on the little Dot, I think. Yeah, I mean the little Dot one is just, it looks basic, right? You have your headphone output and the volume right here. xDuoo looks a little bit nicer. So yeah, has a name here, TA-26, tube headphone amp, a power switch like this. For the little Dot, it's actually on the back. Yeah, this one's on the front. And phone right here. This is the exact same as the little Dot. You have a 1/4 inch the input right here for the headphone jack. So if you have a 3.5, it includes the adapter for it. And then you have the volume knob, which is a nice red color. So this makes it yeah, a lot easier to see, and visually kind of appealing, I guess, to have this kind of color. Yeah, so that is the front. Very nicely done. Again, this is a sandblasted aluminum finish, so it's very nice. And at the back here, pretty much the same as the little Dot. You have a pair of aux in and aux out, both RCA, and unbalanced, of course. So no balanced output here or input, so I'm going to have to use the, for my headphones is fine, right, because it doesn't support balanced anyways, but if you guys have balanced headphones, then yeah, tough luck here. And then you have an AC input, and that's pretty much it, exactly the same controls as the little Dot, just the xDuoo is bigger and heavier and looks a bit nicer. So yeah guys, this is the Little Dot Mark II and the xDuoo TA-26. These are two of the cheapest, most affordable full tube headphone amplifiers on the market. Little Duo $150 and the xDuoo $300. So the xDuoo is twice the price, but also you can see that it's bigger, it's heavier, seems to be finished a bit better, and they're using different tubes. So the xDuoo is using 6 and 8P tubes for the preamp and 6 and 5P tubes for the buffer or the output stage. The Little Dot's using 6J1s, two 6J1s as preamp tubes, and two 6 and 6s for, I guess, the output stage. So yeah, they're using different tubes. They're, I guess, similar construction. They got similar I/O and everything, but you know, this one's a lot bigger transformer as well. Yeah, we'll see the tonal differences. I would expect there to be some tonal differences though, because they are using different tubes, and although they kind of look similar in you know, the form factor, maybe the actual circuits are different. I haven't checked the circuits yet. Both of them say they're using pretty premium resistors and caps. But yeah, we're going to test out these two and compare and see which ones, see if the xDuoo is actually worth, you know, twice the price of the Little Dot. But maybe, you know, the Little Dot's just fantastic value. We'll see. Alright, so now I have these two full tube headphone amps on here set up. I have the xDuoo TA-26 and the Little Dot Mark II. And yeah, we're going to power them both on and then check them out. I'm going to be playing some songs using my AKSE100 as the source and the DAC. So let's do it. And we play the same songs on each, of course. And so we'll flip the switch. Alright, you can see both of these tubes light up naturally. There's no LEDs under these guys. There's natural tube lighting, tube heat powering this. Alright, and I'll be using my Bayer DT1990 Pros 250 ohm headphones, and yeah, seeing how well these will work. Okay, so first I'll be using the Little Dot Mark IIs. I'll be playing the same song on each of them, but the Mark IIs first. Okay, I have my DAP volume set to full, and then I have it about halfway here. Yeah, roughly halfway on the Little Dot Mark IIs in order to get a decent volume here. So yeah, these 250 ohm Bayers, about full volume on the DAP and then half volume on the Little Dot Mark IIs. Okay, so just like I said in my other video when I was comparing this one against the Creative X3s and the Parasound Z-DAC, yeah, what I really like about this one is the natural organic vocals. So I'm playing like vocal tracks. I feel like it's very natural, very organic, very present. And yeah, when I listen to other tracks though, not as much detail. So when I listen to like electronic tracks or something like that, tracks with a lot of dynamics, it's not very detailed. However, tracks with a lot of vocals, like for example, if I'm playing some Carpenters or Nina Simone, yeah, this one is really good for that. Billie Holiday, you know, stuff like that. Really nice, brings out the voices in the mid-range. So yeah, that's what I like about the Little Dot Mark IIs. I'm going to see if this one's any different, because I think that is a property of tubes in general, is that it brings out the mids and the vocal warmth a lot. So I'm going to check that out with the these guys. Alright, so these guys are bigger, presumably more powerful. So check these out. Alright. I'm playing some same songs on both. Okay. This one definitely has more power than the Little Dot. The Little Dot, I had to turn up the volume to halfway. The xDuoo, the volume is only about like 15%. Yeah. The volume is like 15% on the xDuoo, and it's already plenty powerful. So this one definitely has a lot more power on tap than the Little Dot. Because this one I turned up like halfway, the volume. This volume, 15% is already plenty loud enough. So this one has definitely a lot more power on tap. Yeah. Soundstage is better on this one. Yeah. For sure. This one sounds more rich and detailed compared to this. Yeah, I mean, basically there is that characteristic tube warmth from this one, and kind of forward mid-range presence. So again, really, really good for vocals. For other tracks, just okay. But for vocals, oh my god, this thing is amazing for tracks with a lot of mids. Like yeah, if you have any track, a lot of guitar, a lot of vocals, then this will definitely push it forward. So it's mid forward, just like with this one. With any vocal tracks, it seems like very natural, very organic sounding for vocals. But this one, first of all, has more power than the little Dot does, and like I'm only at 15% volume right now. So these are 250 ohm headphones. If I had Sennheiser HD800s, yeah, this could definitely drive it really well. Old Stax headphones, like Bear T1s, 600 ohm, like whatever. This could drive everything. I'm pretty sure this has enough power on tap for any headphone. So this is a lot more power, first of all. And then second of all, I feel like this has more rich detail. So compared to the little Dots, the little Dots are nice, you know, like I said, for the vocal tracks, very organic, natural sounding. This is that. It has the naturalness, the organic timbre, but also it has more richer, yeah, it has more richer detail on top of that. So when I listen to the same tracks, especially the vocal tracks, more warmth, more richer. I feel like more detailed as well. Now, still not compared to solid state amps, right? Compared to the best solid state amps like the THXs and stuff, or even the Parasound that I reviewed in my other video. Like, it doesn't have as much detail as those solid state amps does, but it has more detail than the little Dot. So yeah, and soundstage is also better as well. So I feel like this one has more soundstage. It's got more richer mids, a little bit more detailed as well. So yeah, I think this is like twice the cost of the little Dots, so I guess it should make sense. But yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised. It actually is a noticeable difference. So, you know, because I haven't really like played around with too many full tube headphone amps. And you know, what's the difference between, I'm not sure if it's like the difference between the tubes or not, or just like this one has different circuit, but, or a bigger transformer obviously as well. This one definitely has more power, but also, yeah, also really great for vocal tracks, just like the little Dot. However, the mids seem more detailed, and soundstage is a bit wider. So that's what I noticed from the xDuoo. So yeah, that's just from my personal experience. I think the xDuoos definitely seem like in terms of the detail and the soundstage, I think is better than the xDuoo, and the power, right? The detail, the soundstage, and the power of the xDuoo is more than the little Dot. I mean, the little Dots are okay. I mean, little Dots are okay for 150 bucks. You really can't really. I mean, the little Dots are okay for 150 bucks. You really can't complain too much. I mean, yeah, for the characteristic, I think if you get into like, okay, so the little Dots are $150, so I can't complain too much. If you're just getting entry level into any sort of full tube stuff, this is really the cheapest full tube headphone amp that you can get on the market, so can't complain too much about that. But if you want to step up to another level, pay $300. You get the xDuoo TA-26, and you get bigger soundstage. Still not as big as like a solid state amp, but relatively bigger soundstage compared to the little Dot, and relatively more detail and much more power. I mean, it's way more power actually. So yeah, I guess you do get what you pay for when it comes to these Chinese amps. So definitely I prefer the xDuoo TA-26s, but the little Dots are really nice for the money. So that's what I would say. Both of these are nice for the money. The little Dots more so because they're just extremely affordable. The xDuoos, you pay a little bit more and you get a little bit more soundstage, a little bit more detail, and a lot more power, basically. So, and both of these are output transformerless tube amps. So, yeah, so that's it, guys. I'll also link a video showing. So that's it, guys. I'm also going to show off both of these in a comparison test using my microphone. It's not going to be the best, but at least maybe you guys can see a little bit of what I'm talking about to show off the sound characteristics of both. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, the one characteristic I would say is common to both of these tube amps is the lush mid-range and the romantic warmth. So I think that's what people really talk about when they talk about tube amps. And I know tube amps are not going to be the most detailed. They're not going to measure the best. They have harmonic distortion, but you know, people like that, and I kind of understand why people will pay extra for these full tube amps. Yeah, they're definitely they definitely color the tone, and it's not in a bad way. And they definitely have distortion, but it's not in a bad way. It's that even order harmonics thing. So I can understand that. It's not for every type of music, and it's not for every type of headphone. Like some planar magnetics might sound good with this. IEMs definitely won't be great for this because they're too sensitive. But yeah, if you have like high impedance, low sensitivity headphones, these will really open them up. So I think most Sennheisers, Bayer Dynamics will be pairing really well with these tube amps. The output transformerless tube amps, I mean. And yeah, thing I noticed about them, lush mid-range, organic, natural vocals, and very warm, romantic sounding. So definitely a very unique type of sound signature. So I can appreciate why people would want to go with some full tube amps. Now I don't recommend having this as your only amp because it's so, let's say, tube amps are very picky about what type of headphones, what type of music you listen to. So I would recommend solid state amps are just more versatile, just all around a great performer for most headphones in genres. Solid state amps are going to be just good. They play well with everything basically. Tube amps are a bit more picky, but if you do have the certain type of genre you like, especially with vocals and mid-range stuff, and if you have the high impedance, low sensitive headphones, then definitely it's just a different experience with these tube amps. So yeah, definitely check it out. I would say if you have some money to spare, get a solid state amp first, and then check out a tube headphone amp if you have the money to spare. And oh yes, one other thing I have to mention is that the experience of the sound that I'm describing is really just from the stock tubes, okay? So of course, just like with any tube amp, you can change out the tubes and roll them into whatever tube you want. So I'm just describing my experience with the stock tubes, okay? So yeah, again, you can change the sound signature, I think, by rolling the tubes and swapping them out with another one. But yeah, just keep in mind what I'm talking about just with the stock tubes.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. I like it.
So what I feel like is compared to like a THX amp or something like that, like a solid state amp, headphone amps generally they don't have like the most detail actually, and that's because they actually introduce some distortion compared to so they don't whatever measurements are not going to be good on tube amps. What they do have, obviously the warmth, but obviously I think not just the warmth, but I think for vocals it's really good. I think it brings out a lot of the vocals, makes it sound more natural and organic. For the other tracks, stuff with more electronic stuff, more with stuff with dynamics, it's not the best for the detail and dynamics and stuff like that. So that's why I think solid state amps might be better for that. But yeah, when it comes to vocals and stuff, had a lot of naturalness, organic warmth to it. That's why I think tube amps are good. So really, I think it depends on what kind of songs you're listening to, what kind of headphones you're listening to too, right? So yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, and overall, it's pretty mid-centric.
Yep.
But also pretty bass-centric too. But in the bass-centric is probably because of the headphones. These Bears are a little bit bass-centric anyway.
Right.
But then the thing is, through this amp, none of the frequencies feel like they're actually recessed in any way. Because I can hear the drums really well, I can hear the mids really well, I can hear the bass. The bass actually isn't drowning out anything else, so I can hear it all well separated.
The thing I noticed about tube amps is the mids are very natural and organic. Yeah, that's the thing I most about tubes.
Yeah, the mids are more prominent than usual, and then but it's not covering anything else either.
Yep.
Soundstage, these headphones, these Bear headphones with the setup, the soundstage is more intimate. There is a soundstage, but it's more an intimate soundstage. It kind of feels like you're actually on the stage. And then your band members are right beside you. That's what it feels
tube amps are generally not the best for soundstage, but yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an intimate soundstage, but there is some soundstage, so it's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, the things I noticed the most about it, the warmth and natural organic mids, right? Not the best for a lot of detail or clarity and stuff like that. I think solid states, better solid state amps are pretty good for that. But yeah, overall, I think it's just a unique.
I think it's pretty nice.
It's a unique,
yeah.
different flavor, basically.
I
For
think it's pretty
depends
nice.
on what kind of headphone you use, you pair it with.
And how much was this?
It's $300, which is pretty good. It's an all tube amp. It's not a hybrid. It's an all tube amp.
There's no DAC in there.
No DAC. Well, you're using my Hybeast DAC.
Exactly. So this doesn't have a DAC itself. This is just the amp.
Yep, it's just the amp, but $300 is actually a good price for like a full tube headphone.
Yep.
It's like there's no hybrid here.
Right.
So I mean the shit audio is like 150 for a hybrid, right? So this is 300 for a full tube. Not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's really well built too. So yeah, I like it. xDuoo is a Chinese brand.